All right. I'd like to start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rakha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is various topics, and I can't hear myself, so just trying to see what's going on here. I can't hear anything, so I'm not sure what's going on. Usually I'm able to hear myself on the oh, I know why. Okay, now I know why. All right, I have my speakers off. All right. Okay, today's topic is various topics. I really don't have anything planned. I'm just gonna go totally in the spirit. I've been looking up a few different things, just doing some running around I had to do, and then listening to some videos, trying to come up with a topic, but nothing really hit me as far as a topic goes. So we're just gonna go in the spirit. A few things that were, going around in my head, so to speak. And an article that I have that we can go to and deal with that, and just take it from there. Because I'm not sure if it was the last lesson we did, where I actually went, into it might have been either the last one or the one before that, the iron weapon, or they have more than heart could wish. I believe it's they have more than heart could wish, more than likely. And pretty much, and I believe it was that lesson we did. We went into into the serpent in the book of Genesis, the 3rd chapter, which we'll get that real quick. Because this devil, what you got to remember is he has done a lot of, pretty much a lot of fuckery on the planet, and he's had pretty much the whole world in utter deception, because that's what was given to him, as a that was one of his gifts, outside of the sword, that they're able to deceive people pretty much easily, but they can't deceive the elect. So before we go there, let's go to the book of, let me flip over here. Let's go to the book of 2 Corinthians 2:11. It says, "Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices." And why are we not ignorant of his devices? Because the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai gave us the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to be able to see through it, and the scriptures say that if it were possible, they would deceive the very elect, but the point is that it's not possible. So if we are of the elect, this devil will not be able to deceive us. That's why we say we hope we are the elect, because this devil is very, very deceptive. This is Genesis 3:1. "Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which the Lord power had made." So now the word subtle, which we looked at before, is the word irawam, which comes from the word iram. It means subtlety, crafty, prudent, beware, vary, which is H6175. It says subtle, shrewd, crafty, sly, sensible, crafty, shrewd, sensible, prudent. Now let's look up this word shrewd. Shrewd, having or showing sharp powers of judgment, astute. They're very astute, very wise, but they're very wise in what? In wickedness, as far as wickedness is concerned. All right, let's go to another one. The word sly. Let's look up sly. The word sly, having or showing a cunning and deceitful nature. And if you notice, you go into the scriptures, once this book was given to this devil, they were able to manipulate the minds of the people. But the way they did it very cunningly. This is why in 2 Peter 1:16 it says, "For we have not followed cunningly devised fables when we made known unto you the power and the coming of our Lord Yahweh Shai Hamashiach, but were eyewitnesses of his majesty," because these devils have used cunningly devised fables when telling the world about the Messiah. Because first and foremost, when you go to images, a white man comes up, a so-called white man, an Edomite comes up. All right. And this is one of the greatest deceptions that have happened on the planet. You know, this, the Most High being a so-called white man, so on and so forth. You know, so this is how they were able to deceive, but it was done very cunningly. And this is why you have, like, I was listening to this guy, not Eustace Mullins, Jordan Maxwell earlier today, and I was like a 2-hour video. I watched maybe 20 minutes, maybe half hour, you know, riding around doing what I had to do, you know, trying to get some, you know, some information, you know, to do a lesson. And this guy is a total bug out, you know. I mean, when it comes to the conspiracy stuff, he's very good at it. You know, when it comes to magic and different things of that nature, he's very good at it. But then when it comes to the scriptures, he bombs because this is not for him. You know, and then he'll go into, you know, he'll say that the Bible is all allegorical. You know, the Garden of Eden really represented something else, and this. So this guy is totally bugged out. You know, but you know, this is the way that Esau is able to manipulate the minds of the people, because these were all cunningly devised fables. They actually sat down and sketched things together to be able to blind the minds of these people. So now cunningly devised is sophizo. All right, G4679 is sophizo, or yeah, sophizo. It says to make wise, teach, to become wise, to have understanding, to invent, play the sophist, to devise cleverly or cunningly. And the sophists, I believe those were those wise men of the past, a paid teacher of philosophy and rhetoric in ancient Greece. Yep. Associated in popular thought with moral skepticism and specious reasoning. So because what they do is, when it comes to the Bible, they want to cast doubt on the scriptures. That's why they won't come straight out and say it in some cases that the Bible, they won't come out and say that, well, the Bible's false, but they'll hint, you know, or they'll put questions in people's minds in a roundabout way so that make a person to question, you know, if this is really real or not. You know, that's what a sophist was. You know, they were into rhetoric, and that's what these devils are. Vocab Malone, he would be considered like a sophist, but not fully, because he tries to use the Bible, you know, for people to believe in it, but in their demonic warped reasoning, you know. And then, but when it comes to the actual true doctrine, he's turning things upside down. And this is why the Lord said that their turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. All right. So now it says a person who reasons with clever but fallacious arguments. See, so this is what they do. They're arguing with clever but fallacious arguments, because when you sit there and you listen to it, it sounds plausible. Oh, well, you know, maybe that, you know, and this is why people get caught up in it, you know, because they don't come out straight up and tell you that the devil. They play around it in so many words. This is the book of, I'll start at Colossians chapter 2. Let's see. I'll start at 2:18. Let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility and worshiping of angels, because they'll say they'll try to bring in what's known as a Trinity, which that's another hoax. There's no such thing as no Trinity. The scriptures do not mention anything about a Trinity. There's no such thing as a Trinity. You have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, but they're three separate entities, because when it comes down to the Trinity itself, they're trying to say that you use a term called homoousian, if I'm not mistaken on the pronunciation. And pretty much what they're saying is one body, three different personalities. So in other words, they're saying that the Most High, Yahweh Shai, and the Holy Spirit are all one body, but they have three different personalities, which that's a cunningly devised fable, you know, and it's not so. And when you go back into the 1500s, I believe it was, you had a man by the name of Erasmus Desiderius, and he's the one that translated the Bible into the Greek. And when you look at the tools, the Textus Receptus, this was his translation, of the Bible into the Greek. And then you have the morphological Greek New Testament. They have different ones. So he was responsible for this Textus Receptus. Now, in the book of 1 John, the 5th chapter, and the 7th and the 8th verse, or really the 7th verse, they actually inserted things in there that shouldn't be in there. When you look at the verse is very short. But then when you look at the English is way longer than the Greek verse. All right. So these are a way, and the reason why they did that was because they're trying to get people to worship, other gods. This so-called Trinity, which that Trinity really goes back all the way back to ancient Babylon. With Semiramis, Tammuz, and Nimrod. I'm sure in the Sumerian religion they had their Trinity, and then when you go up in the history, you have different ones for different nations, and when they ruled. But it's all a bunch of it's a big farce. It's a cunningly devised fable. It says, "Let no man beguile you of your reward in the voluntary humility and worshiping of angels, intruding into those things which he had not seen." See, and these people are talking about stuff that they don't have no knowledge about. When we speak about the spirit world, we're telling brothers what we know based off of what the scriptures say. But as far as to be able to break it down 100% properly and give every detail, we can't do that because, even though we have been there many times, we don't have any remembrance of the spirit world, And this is why the Apostle Paul made this statement. 2 Corinthians 12:1. It is not expedient for me, doubtless, to glory. I will come to visions and revelation of the Lord. Salakia. I knew a man in Yahushua about 14 years ago. He's speaking about himself in the third person. Whether in the body I cannot tell, or whether out of the body I cannot tell. The Most High knoweth, because when you go back into the history, they had stoned Paul, and he actually was dead, and they drug his body out to the outside of the city. But then the spirit came back into him. But in the process of him being dead for that moment, his spirit was going up into the heavens. It says such an one caught up to the third heaven, which is what in the spirit world. This is what Esau calls the fourth dimension. All right. It says, and I knew such a man. Why? Because he's speaking about himself. Whether in the body I cannot tell, whether in the body or out of the body I cannot tell. The Most High knoweth. How that he was caught up into paradise. So he actually went into paradise, which is what? In the heavens. And contrary to popular belief, all spirits, when the person dies, all spirits go back to the Father of spirits, which is the Most High. Go to that real quick. There's no such thing as going to hell. Ecclesiastes 12:7. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, which what is the dust? The body. It goes back into the earth. That's the grave. Some translations say hell, but when you go to the proper translation of the Greek and the Hebrew words, it's grave, not hell. That's another cunningly devised fable, that hell doctrine, to scare the people, to give their money to the church. That's what it went back to. So then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, which is the body, and the spirit shall return unto the Most High who gave it. So whatever spirit it is, it goes back to the Most High who gave it. Because when you go to Ezekiel 28th chapter, let me turn this down because they try to give you strikes. Here it is. You're not even putting music on it, but because you have something playing in the background, they'll strike you. This is the book of Ezekiel. Is that 28? Let's see. No. It might be 18. Let me go to the 18th chapter. Ezekiel, the 18th chapter. Yep. Ezekiel 18:4. Behold, all souls are mine. As the soul of the Father, so also the soul of the Son is mine. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. So pretty much every soul that's ever created is the Most High. So when you die, your spirit goes back to the Most High who gave it, as we read in Ecclesiastes, and the body goes into the grave. There's no such thing as an in between or purgatory or in between or hell, and none of that. Those are cunningly devised fables as we're reading. So back in 2 Corinthians 12:4, how that he was caught up into paradise and heard unspeakable words. Now, when he was caught up into paradise, that means his spirit was going up into the heavens. And as his spirit was going up into the heavens, he saw many different things, many wonderful things, many great, wonderful things that he couldn't explain with the terminologies that we have here today. And even back then, there was no way that he could put into words what he saw, because that is a different world. That is another world, another dimension. So he couldn't really put it into words. That's why he said, and heard unspeakable words, which is not lawful for man to utter, meaning that there was no words to explain what he saw, and the glory of what he saw. This is why, we all have a spirit in us, and sometimes the spirit groans to go back into the spirit world, because the spirit already knows what the spirit world is like. It knows that it's a rest, like it tells you here in the book of Isaiah. I believe it's the 57th chapter. Yep, 57:1. The righteous perisheth, and no man layeth it to heart, and merciful men are taken away, none considering that the righteous is taken away from the evil to come. He shall enter into peace. They shall rest in their beds. What beds? Up in the heavens. Each one walking in his uprightness. See? Why? Because when you're in the spirit world, you're totally upright. It's the flesh. That's why Yahweh said the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. This flesh was corruptible, but the spirit of Israel is righteous. So when you go back into the spirit world, the spirit is back in its proper order, how it's supposed to be. It's not having. It doesn't have an adversary that is fighting against back and forth, trying to do the right thing from doing the wrong thing. It says each one walking in his uprightness. So they're in their beds. This is why Job said that he said that the man longeth for the grave, pretty much. Because when everybody dies, all spirits which belong to the Most High all go to the Most High, and they all go to one place. Matter of fact, before I read this, let's go to Ecclesiastes 6:6. It says, yea, though he live 1,000 years twice told, yet hath he seen no good. Do not all go to one place? What's that place? Up into the heavens. When you read the 3rd chapter of the same book, Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, and the 18th verse is it? I'll start at 17. I said in mine heart, the Most High shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. Right, because when you die, you go to the heavens, and the Most High judges you, and then you come back on the earth to play out your sentence. I said in mine heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that the Most High might manifest them, that they might see that they themselves are beasts. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Even one thing befalleth them. As the one dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they have all one breath, so that a man has no preeminence above a beast, for all is vanity. All go into one place, all are of the dust, all turn to dust again. And that's dealing with the body. All right. It says, who knoweth the spirit of man? See, because it said to go to one place, which is the dust, which is the earth. Who knoweth the spirit of man that goeth upward? See? And the spirit of the beast that goes downward to the earth. So the spirit of man goes upward and the spirit of beast stays on the earth. Why? Because beasts are in their proper order. Man is the one that has the understanding to know how to do right and wrong. So man is the only one that has to go up before the throne to be judged after death. That's why Yahweh said it is appointed unto man once to die and afterwards the judgment. Because you receive your judgment up in the heavens. It says, wherefore I perceive there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his portion. For who shall bring him to see what shall be after him? And I was reading earlier about King Saul, and how he went to the witch of Endor, and he actually called up Samuel from his grave, and Samuel cursed him out because Samuel was at rest. He said, why you disquiet me? I was, in other words, I was chilling, man. Why you fucking with me? So many words, just to put it in layman's terms. And then because Saul was a wicked king, right? It said the evil spirit of the Lord was upon him. But then Samuel told him, look, this day you and your sons are going to be with me where I'm at. So Samuel was a righteous man. He was chilling. He was in the heavens, right? Chilling. So what happened? The Saul and his sons were going to be there also. And they were also wicked. And this is why when you read in Job, the 3rd chapter, and you scroll down to because Job cursed his day and he wished he was stillborn. Job 3:11. Why died I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the spirit or the ghost when I came out of the belly? Because it's really the spirit, is not a ghost. Why did the knees prevent me, or why the breast that I should suck? So in other words, he wished he would have died before he was even born. It says, because if he would be dead, for now should I have lain still and been quiet, I should have slept, then had I been at rest. He wouldn't be able to be oppressed. He wouldn't have sorrows. He wouldn't have pain. He wouldn't have sickness. He wouldn't have money woes. If he, he didn't have money woes, but, he wouldn't have to worry about paying bills and all of that, which he didn't have to worry about. But just things that come upon, the living, like the scripture speak about Israel, that we are subject to payments, and it is so. It says with kings and counselors of the earth. So if you would have been quiet, if you would have been in the grave, he would have been with kings and counselors of the earth. Then you had wicked kings, but they'll be there in the spirit world. And counselors, you have had wicked counselors. It tells you in Psalms, the 1st chapter, lead me not into the counsel of the wicked or something like that. So you have wicked counselors and wicked kings that are also in this place where Job wanted to go to. It says, which built desolate places for themselves. Because when you go back to the pharaohs, they built cities for themselves, or they built tombs for themselves, and they put all their riches and everything in there. Some of them even buried their servants alive with them, because they thought that this servant would be their servants in the afterlife. But it's not so. Or with princes that had gold, who filled their houses with silver. They go back to the pharaohs. Or as an hidden untimely birth I had not been, as infants which never saw light. It says there, where? In the spirit world, where we're talking about, that the scriptures are speaking about. There, the wicked cease from troubling. So the wicked don't bother anybody, and they're not bothered. And there the weary be at rest. So you don't have your boss over you telling you what to do. You're not catching up any kind of hell. It says there the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary be at rest. There the prisoners rest together. See, they hear not the voice of the oppressor. The small and the great are there, and the servant is free from his master. So those Egyptians, pharaohs, that would bury their servants with them alive, and the servant died, the servant was free from his master. You know, he didn't have to worry about serving his master in the afterworld. Why? Because in the spirit world, everything is in proper order. Wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul, which long for death, but it cometh not, and dig for it more than for hid treasures, who rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave, because this is the proper translation in the English for the Hebrew word sha'awal and for the Greek word Hades, which is grave, not hell. No such thing as hell. And you look at the word grave, well, this one is Quabar, but in other places where you see the word grave or hell, it's the word sha'awal, which is the actual grave. Okay? So let's go back to here, 2 Corinthians 12 and 4, how that he was caught up into paradise and heard unspeakable words, which it is not lawful for a man to utter. Of such an one will I glory, yet of myself I will not glory, but in mine infirmities. All right. So if you're gonna glory in anything, we glory in our infirmities. So going back to Colossians 2 and 18, let no man beguile you of your reward in the voluntary humility and worshiping of angels. Why? Because these devils, they're very cunning in the way that they do things. Now, I was doing some research because back in the days when we used to go over the Hebrew symbols or the Hebrew characters, you had different symbols, and each symbol had a meaning to it. And let's go to the images. Let's go to and meaning. And there's a reason why I want to go to this. Let's see what this says here. Yeah, this Pinterest crap. You can't, they want you to actually sign in for this. Fuck that. Yeah, when you look at the Hebrew alphabet, it has different symbols, and each symbol means something. Like A is alap, which means cattle or 1,000. Ba or bayath, which is really house. Ga, which is gamal, which is camel, so on and so forth. And then when you get to the la, which was lamad, which means to learn, they said here ox goad. But I remember back in the days, we were taught that it was a serpent, because when you look at the Syrian form or the Aramaic form of the la, it looks like a coiled serpent. But they'll say that the ta is a serpent, and this doesn't look like a coiled serpent to me. And the reason why this makes sense that this would be the serpent or la or lamad, because the word lamad means to learn. And the serpents are very cunning, very astute, as the definition gave of it. Let me see if I could get this word real quick. See, look, serpent, a large snake, or a sly or treacherous person, especially one who exploits a position of trust in order to betray it. And that's all this devil has done. See, there's a method to his madness. He is deceiving people and having people to fall for his bullshit. Why? Because he has an ultimate or ulterior goal in mind. And that ulterior goal in mind is to put everybody into captivity underneath him, and he'll do whatever it takes in order for him to accomplish that. This is why it tells you here in Ecclesiasticus 12 and 10 in the Apocrypha, never trust thine enemy. For like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. And iron rust. If you take a piece of iron and you put it outside, you have those cast iron pans, and then if you wash it, you use it the first time and you wash it and you don't dry them properly, or you don't oil them down, or whatever you gotta do, and you just let them sit, they'll rust. Whenever you put iron, it's gonna just rust. you know. So it's you can bank on it that that iron is gonna rust. So just like iron rusts, so is this devil's wickedness. Is the same way, you know. It's but the only thing with this devil is he hides everything behind a smile. He hides everything under false pretense. They'll smile in your face, but behind your back they'll stab the hell out of you, you know. And this is why whenever you go around Edomites, and the first thing you notice when they see Jake is they start smiling, you know, because if they smile at you and you smile back, "Ah, yeah, we got this one," you know. But when you don't smile at them, they're like, "Ah, we have one that can see," you know, because that's their whole goal. Their whole goal is to be, you know, to be as discreet as possible until they fulfill and accomplish their agenda. And this is part of their power. Part of their power is deception. This is why it says, matter of fact, before I read on here, let's see, I can bring it up on, did I bring it up already? Let's see. Okay, nope, that's going into something else. Slide. All right, you know what? Let me just go. A matter of fact, here we could go here. You know what? I read this first, 2 Corinthians 2:11, which you read already. At least Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices, you know? And this is why it's important for the Lord Yahweh Bashem Shai to open up and keep open our eyes so that we can continually see through this devil. So 2 Corinthians 4:3. But if our gospel be hid, it is hid to them that are lost. See? Why? Because they're not going to find their way in this world, because Satan, well, first of all, the Most High got a block on him when you go back to Isaiah the 6th chapter, you know, and then he allowed this devil to use that manipulation, you know, that smoke and mirrors to blind the minds of these people, using the very book that the Lord gave us to for our benefit, you know. Matter of fact, let's go from there before we read on. Let's go to Galatians chapter 1, because this book, the Bible, right? Let's pull it. Let's pull the Bible up. The Bible. Let's go to images. This book, the Bible, which this is most people, this is them right here. Read me. Their Bible is collecting dust. But the Bible is a book to where you can use it for righteousness and you can use it for wickedness. Like when you read of 2 Corinthians, the 2nd chapter we were just at, it speaks about using the word of the Lord deceitfully. We don't use the word of the Lord deceitfully, but it has been used deceitfully and it's still being used deceitfully. And a lot of these individuals that are in the these so-called pastors like TD Jakes and Creflo Dollar and others of that ilk, they know that they're being wicked. They know that they're doing the wrong thing, but their motivation is money. You know, so this book here, the Bible, can be used in a fallacious way. But the bottom line is they have to have it, like my man Gary Oldman said in that movie Book of Eli. They have to have it, because without it, because he said the people will believe it if it says it in the book. So if they're able to manipulate it the way they have been for ages, but now this same book that they've used to manipulate the minds of the people is turning around to bite them in the ass, because the Lord raised up the true men to bring out the proper understanding and the proper doctrine of it. So going back here, Galatians 1:6, it says, I marvel that you are so soon removed from him that called you into the grace of Yahushua HaMashiach unto another gospel. See? So what is another gospel? Another understanding of than what you know, than what you were taught. Because this devil has used the same Bible to manipulate the minds of Jake, especially Jake. You know, fuck the other nations. They use it mainly to manipulate the minds of Jake. You know, it says which is not another. Why? So it's another gospel, right? But it's not another book. It's the same exact book that they're using to manipulate the minds of the people and to deceive the people, with the very book that has the actual truth and the true doctrine in it and the true gospel. You know, and what they did was they totally flipped it around to their favor, in the favor of the nations, using scriptures like John 3:16, for God so loved the world, and other scriptures of that same wording, you know, and the scriptures about the Gentiles, which they have no clue or no idea what that means, you know. But it was all done for the sake of manipulating the minds of the people, using the very book, the very same book that has the proper breakdown in it, but the men of the Lord that the Lord gave to teach it can be the only ones to bring that out, as it tells you in the book of Romans 15. The 10th chapter, Romans 10 and 15. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe on him in whom they have not heard? And how shall they believe without a preacher, which is a teacher or a prophet? You know, because you have to have somebody that's inspired by Yahweh Bashem and Yahweh Shai to be able to understand it. And how shall they preach except they be sent? So these devils weren't sent to teach the truth of the Bible. They were sent, but they were sent as the deceivers, you know, the slanderers. You know, that's what they were sent for. So as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace. See? Why? Because you have a gospel, one particular gospel, not many different ones. Not this group has this much, and this group has that much, and this other group has. No. When you go back to Yahweh Shai and the disciples and the men that came after them, they all had the same gospel, the same doctrine. And the ones that were upset with that doctrine, you know, were coming against them was because they were trying to push their agenda and not what the scriptures were saying. They were trying to keep hold and sway of those traditions that they were keeping hold and sway of from back in the days, you know. So it says, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. Okay, it says, but they have not all obeyed the gospel. See, because you have a lot of jakes out there that have not obeyed the gospel. You have some that have learned the gospel, learned the right way, but then turned away from it. And you have some that have hardened their ears because the Most High has hardened their ears. And you have scriptures like John 3:16 and others in the Gentile scriptures, which pretty much what they are is they're what's called a stumbling block, because you have stumbling blocks that are set up in the scriptures for the ones that the Lord don't want, the Israelites that the Lord don't want to fall by those stumbling blocks. It says, for Isaiah saith, Lord, who hath believed our report? Now let's go from there to, I'm not sure if that is in the actual book of Psalms, but let's go to Isaiah, because I know the word is in there, in Isaiah 8 and 14. It says, start at 13. Sanctify the Lord Yahweh Bashem Shai of hosts himself, and let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. And he shall be for a sanctuary, but for a stone of stumbling, and for a rock of offense to both the houses of Israel, for a gin and for a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So the Lord is going to be a trap to 2/3 of the nation of Israel, to where they won't be able to get this knowledge. Let's see what this is here. Okay, I can get rid of this. This is Psalms 69. And then I want to look up for 69 and 22. Let their table become a snare before them. What's the table? This knowledge, this truth. And this is why when you read the book of Isaiah 28, it speaks about that all their tables are full of vomit. You know? It says, let their table become a snare before them, and that which should have been for their welfare, let it become a trap. What is supposed to be for our welfare? The words that are written in this book. This is our salvation. This is our hope. It says, receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your soul. So this word is for our benefit, for the benefit of Israel. But to certain Israelites out there, 2/3 of them, it's going to become a trap. Because if you notice, a good bulk of Christians and Roman Catholics and all that, they're Jakes, the so-called Negro tribes, it's so-called Latin tribes, and so on and so forth. But they believe in the Bible, but for most of them, that Bible is a trap. Salakia. It says, "Let their eyes be darkened, that they see not." See, and make their loins continually to shake, because they're not going to be able to get the full understanding of this word. Because if it was so, they would be converted, and then they would be healed, and the Lord will have to save them. It says, "Pour out thine indignation upon them, and let thy wrathful anger take hold of them. Let their habitation be desolate, and let none dwell in their tents." So, going back, you know what? We'll go back there, but let me just type in stumbling block. And I actually go to that. Let's see. Oh man, this is a good one. Excuse me. Ezekiel 3:20. "Again, when a righteous man doth turn from his righteousness and commit iniquity, and I lay a stumbling block before him, he shall die, because thou hast not given him warning. He shall die in his sin, and his righteousness which he hath done shall not be remembered, but his blood will I require at thy hand." So now the reason why this is a good scripture is because the Most High laid that stumbling block there. The same way the Most High sent the evil spirit upon Saul. So the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, and it was sent to him directly from the Most High. So let's go to the word stumbling block. H4383, makashawal. It says a stumbling, means or occasion of stumbling block, stumbling, fall, means or occasion of stumbling block. Now you could have an actual physical stumbling block, or you could have a spiritual stumbling block. Now a physical stumbling block would be like what's written here in the law, Leviticus 19:14. "Thou shalt not curse the deaf, nor put a stumbling block before the blind, but shall fear thy power. I am Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai." So if you put a stumbling block before the blind, that means what? As he's walking, he can't see what's in front of him. He's going to stumble right over and fall and trip. He could hurt himself. Well, that's the physical stumbling block. But a spiritual stumbling block would be these different philosophies and these different beliefs outside of the truth, that are causing Jake to fall. So now we looked up the word stumbling block in the dictionary. It says a circumstance that causes difficulty or hesitation. See, and when this truth comes out to most Jakes out there, they don't want to get involved with it. And then when they read the Bible on their own, so I'm gonna read the Bible on my own. I'm gonna get my own understanding. My grandmama taught me, so I know that Bible. And then when they get into it, what happens? They end up stumbling and they end up falling, because they won't be able to get the spiritual benefit of the word and the spirit and the spiritual understanding of the word, so that they can be saved, because the Most High doesn't want them. That's the reason why he allowed the stumbling block to be in their way. And this is why he said that, let's go to Isaiah 65 and no, I'm sorry, the 66th chapter. Next chapter. Let's see. Isaiah 66:4. "I also will choose their delusions." Because when you're deluded, you're in a different frame of mind. You're not yourself. Delusion, an idiosyncratic belief or impression that is firmly maintained despite being contradicted by what is generally accepted as reality or rational argument, typically a symptom of mental disorder. And this is what Jake has. Jake has a symptom of mental disorder spiritually. Some of them have it physically, but they have it. Some of a lot of Jakes out there have it spiritually. They typically a symptom of mental disorder, misapprehension, misconception, misunderstanding, and that's what it is. That's why the scriptures say wisdom is the principal thing Therefore, get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding. Why? Because not every Israelite out there has understanding. And you have those Israelites out there that read the Bible without the proper understanding, and they're deluded, because even if you try to explain to them and try to break it down for them, they already set in what they believe in, because their conscience is seared with a hot iron. So you know what? They were deluded. The Lord put that delusion upon them to follow in that direction, so that they can't make it. It says mistake, error, misinterpretation. See, because there's only one interpretation of the scriptures, and that's the proper interpretation. There's only one doctrine, one faith, one belief, one gospel, and that's it. And that good news is that the Most High is going to send his son Yahushua 2,000 years ago to shed his blood to save the nation of Israel. And in this time, only the Israelites that are of the elect will make it. It says misconstruction. See, because they constructed it, they built, but like the scriptures speak about, they built with untempered mortar. See, so their construction is the wrong construction. It looks like a building, but it really isn't, because it's not put together properly. Misbelief. See, the action of deluding someone, or the state of being deluded. Okay, so now let's go back to Isaiah 66:4. I also will choose their delusions and will bring their fear upon them. See, so the Lord said he's going to choose their delusions. Because when I called, none did answer. When I spake, they did not hear. But they did evil before mine eyes, and chose that in which I delighted not. So that's why 2/3 of Israel today is blinded. So going back to Isaiah 8:14, and he shall be for a sanctuary, right? And who's he going to be a sanctuary for? The elect. But for a stone of stumbling and for a rock of offense to both the houses of Israel. Why? Because the nation of Israel was split into two. It's still that way today. Even though you have the house of David coming back together, there's still a big divide among Israel, and this is why Judah doesn't accept the so-called Latin tribes and Native American Indian tribes. They don't accept the so-called Indian tribes, because there's still that great divide. But the house of David accepts it. It says, for a jinn, which is a trap, and for a snare, same thing, to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And many among them shall stumble at what? At these different, at the different stumbling blocks in the scriptures. Yahushua being the main stumbling block to them. There's other stumbling blocks in the scriptures, and they're going to stumble also at the men of the Lord, when the men of the Lord go out there and give the proper edification and understanding of the word. They're going to stumble. It says, and fall, see, and be broken. And this is why when you go into the book of Romans, the 11th chapter, it spoke about the Jews that knew that they were Jews, that were severed. They fell. They were broken, so that the Israelite foreigners, the Gentiles, which were the Israelite foreigners, can be brought in. And even in today, you have Israelites that know that they're Israelites, and they still don't accept the other tribes. So be broken and be snared and be taken. Why? Because the Most High doesn't want them. It says, bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples. In other words, seal the law among my elect. And I will wait upon the Lord that hideth his face from the house of Jacob, and I will look for him. Behold, I and the children whom the Lord hath given me are for signs and for wonders in Israel. And Yahushua was the greatest sign in Israel. And we are for signs also, because people are looking at us, and for wonders, people are looking at us like we're bugged out. From the Lord of hosts, Yahweh of hosts, Yahweh Tazabah, or Yahweh Tazabawath, which dwelleth in Zion. Let's look what this word wonders says. See what that says. H4159. Mawapath, wonder, sign, miracle, portent. And this is why when you read 1 Corinthians, the 4th chapter, in the 9th verse, it says that we are made a spectacle unto the world and to angels. Because we're like a sign. Like they you could have a sign that could be a good sign to them, or it could be a bad sign to them. So we're like, people look at. That's why when you walk wherever you go, people sometimes look at you strange. Sometimes you're able to just blend in But for the most part, when people actually sit there and they're staring at you, and you're like, damn, what the hell is this person staring at me for? It's because we have a different look about us. Even and it's crazy because you even have these Jakes out here now that, because Jake, at one time it wasn't cool to wear a beard, but now it's cool to rock a beard now. So you have a whole lot of Jakes out there that wear beards now. So it's not the beard, because back in the days we wear the beard. It wasn't the beard that makes them look at you different. It's just the spirit that we have, that the Lord gave us, and they could see something. So it says wonder as a special display of the Most High's power, and they could see the Most High's power in us. Sign, token of future event. All right. So that was it on that. Let's see. All right. So now let's see what else do we have. Okay, we're done with that. We're done with this. Colossians 2:18, back up here. Let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility and worshiping of angels, intruding into those things which he had not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. And you're gonna have Israelites out there that are gonna fall for this, because see, with Jake, the problem with Jake is that they're not satisfied with the message. Jake always wants to add some gravy or something on top, some hot sauce and some gravy, some coleslaw, some mustard, some extra on the side, some barbecue sauce. They can't just eat the plate of food that was given to them without them trying to add something to the plate. Jake wants to feel special. They want to feel important. The dish was already served up to you. It don't need nothing to it. You don't need nothing put to it. Scripture say, add not to it, least the Lord reprove thee. Let's see where we at. Proverbs chapter 30, verse 5. Every word of the Most High is pure. He is a shield unto them that put their trust in him. Add thou not unto his words, lest he reprove thee, and thou be found a liar. That's why we stick to what the scriptures say. Like the scriptures say, let the Most High be true, but every man a liar. That he might be justified in thy saying and overcome when thou art judged. So Jake always want to add their 2 cents in it. This is why when you go into the scriptures and you're breaking things down, and you have somebody that comes up and think they know something, they're always trying to add their 2 cents. Now every once in a while you have somebody that'll do that, which the scriptures call a gainsayer, and then you're able to go through the precepts in the scriptures, and they'll be like, oh snap, I didn't know that was, and then you could see somebody like that you could work with, because they have potential. They have potential. They have potential, but for the most part, when Jake come up, they're just a Mr. Know-it-all, or Miss Know-it-all, But if you was so all knowing and almighty, how come you still in captivity? How come you wasn't able to deliver yourself from the captivity you in, knowing all this great wisdom that you had? Bunch of jive turkeys, man. All right, let's see what else we have. What's this here? A sophist, sophizo. This is second Peter 1:16. For we have not followed cunningly devised fables. So this devil, his power besides the sword is deception. When we made known unto you the power and the coming of our Lord Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, but were eyewitnesses of his appearance. So when they came to breaking down the scriptures to those Israelite foreigners, they didn't come to them with those deceiving, cunning fables that Jake was bringing back then. Same thing today. It says, for he received from the Most High the Father honor and glory when there came such a voice to him from the excellent glory, this is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. And this voice which came from heaven we heard when we were with him in the holy mount. Okay, so now let's see what else we have. So we're all set with that. What's this here? Okay, we're all set with this. Let me get rid of that. Get rid of some of these tabs so I can. Okay, so you know what? Let's go back to this. Let's go back to this. Wow. So let's see. This is 2 Peter 1:6. So that was it on that. So let's go back here. Iroam, which is sly. So that's back in Genesis, the 3rd chapter. Okay. So it says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord power had made. Now, why was he more subtle? Because he knew about stuff. He knew things, you know. He knew because how was he able to tell a woman, that you shall be as gods, knowing both good and evil, if he didn't know? So these devils know. So the reason why they're able to be so sly and so cunning is because they know the truth. They know what's going on. They done this study. They have records, and they have their so-called scholars and stuff that look stuff up. So they know certain things. It says, and this is why they're able to manipulate the minds of the people. And he said unto the woman, yea, had the Most High said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden. So he was coming in a deceptive way. Now to her, he didn't come to her, like a demon, He came to her, like we're gonna read it. Let's go to 2 Corinthians 11 and 13. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of the anointed. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. So pretty much this serpent here was this, which was an actual person, transformed themselves as if they were so righteous, speaking with them soft, smooth words, and saying things that were pleasing to Eve's ear, because he knew that Eve wanted that power. So he was telling her things, but some of the stuff he was saying was true, but he was mixing lies in there. And this is how this devil gets around. It says, therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. And this is why he was able to deceive her, right? Back in Genesis 3:2. And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. Let me just get this quick precept that came to mind. You know what? Let's open up another one. Damn, does it still have that? Nope. Okay, I still have it here. Okay, good. Let me go back up. And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, the Most High said, you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die, which is dealing with the knowledge of good and evil. And the serpent said unto the woman, you shall not surely die. So he told her, you shall not surely die, which he lied. It says, for the Most High doth know that in the day you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil, which he was correct on that. But what he was wrong on was that he told her she wouldn't die, which was a damn lie. So you see how the devil uses the truth, but then he mixes lies into it. So this is why the Apostle Paul said this to the Israelites back then, that the Israelite foreigners don't be deceived. Matter of fact, we still have that here. So I'm going to pull that back. 2 Corinthians 11 and 3. But I fear, lest by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your mind should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Hamashiach, Yahushai. Because this truth is very simple. And this is why these so-called scholars and these guys that get all into them technical terms and throwing back and forth them theological terms and all that, they get mad because they spend so much money and so much time and so much effort in learning all that stuff, and then the Spirit of the Lord just gave us the truth without having to go to them colleges, and it made it so simple that they're like, nah, no way that's the truth. It's too simple. Well, guess what? The truth is simple, and the truth is very plain. Let's go to Proverbs 8 and 8. All the words of my mouth are in righteousness. There is nothing froward or perverse in them. They are all plain to him that understandeth. And that's the key. Understanding is the key. They are all plain to him that understandeth, and right to them that find knowledge. All right. So That was it on that. Now from there we go to Galatians 1 and 6. And this is why when you read Paul's letters, he's always saying, don't let this person beguile you. No, don't let anybody beguile you of your reward. Don't let anybody fool you. So he pretty much was warning of the deception of this devil. And Israelites out there that have the truth and that distort the truth. Whether it be for money or whether it be they're just bugged out, whatever the case is. So he said this, Galatians 1 and 6, I marvel that you are so soon removed from him that called you into the grace of Yahushua unto another gospel, being beguiled, being children tossed to and fro, which is not another. Why? Because it's the same Bible as we've been speaking about. It's the same Bible. But they're just different people have different interpretations of it, but there's only one way, there's only one truth and one faith, one gospel, one doctrine. And we, beginning with the apostles of Great Millstone and the rest of the men and elders and men of Great Millstone, we believe that the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Shai gave us that 100% truth. Somebody got to have it. But there be some, and this is why the scriptures say, try the spirit. It says, but there be some that trouble you. See? Why? Because they were trying to put these Israelite foreigners back into bondage by keeping the law, which they couldn't keep, and would pervert the gospel of Hamashiach. But though we or an angel from heaven preach unto you, any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed. As we said before, so say I now again, if any man preach any other gospel unto you than that you have received, let him be accursed. All right, so that's a very big offense in teaching somebody contrary to the doctrine of the scriptures. All right, and let's go to, a matter of fact, bring it back here, because we spoke about the serpent, a sly or treacherous person, especially one who exploits a position of trust in order to betray it. And that's the key, because this is what the devil does. Ecclesiastes 12 and 10. Never trust thine enemy. So it means what it says. You can't trust these devils. For like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. Though he humble himself. See, and this is how this devil comes. He comes soft-spoken, like an angel of light. Yes, my child. You ever hear them Roman Catholic priests, the way they talk? Oh, yes, my son, and don't worry. And it's all seem like it's all pleasant, and it's like, man, and you looking at this person, people look at him and say, man, this must be a man of God, because they're so soft-spoken. You see his mannerisms, how he moves. But then right after that, after he gives that speech, he going right behind inside his office or whatever, popping little boys in the ass, doing all kind of foul, filthy shit, and working in tandem with the international bankers on this one world government. Because a part of their one world order is religious, and the Roman Catholic Church is the head. They are the false prophet that is spoken of in the book of Revelation, that are going to help bring about this false dream of this so-called one world government. It says, though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. That's why when these devils are smiling in your face, you be like, I already know where they're coming from. You don't smile back. You just give them a dirty look, and they say, yeah, we have one that can see. And the clown will say, no, but that you just bugged out, man. Look, that's a conspiracy theory, man. They were just being nice. No, motherfucker. The scriptures give us to tell us, though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hadst wiped a looking glass, meaning you keep your eye on that bastard. It says, and thou shalt know that his rust have not been altogether wiped away. Why? Because they were created to be the wicked. Can a leopard change his spots? Then may you do good that are accustomed to doing evil? No. It's all about deception. But they have to divert your attention from that. They have to divert your attention away from their wickedness, so they're going to make it seem like they're so sweet and nice to you until you start fainting and swooning at them, and then all of a sudden that's when the trap comes down, and you'll be like, damn, I should have listened. You know, just like in that movie Geronimo, when the scout he helped take all them Gadites down, and by the time he took everybody down, the Edomites they threw them right in chains in the paddy wagon, so to speak, like he did the other Gadites. And guess what he said? You were right to hate the white man. No shit, Sherlock. You know, if you had such a big brain back then, why didn't you use it? But you know what? It's deeper than that because it was the Most High that caused that to happen. You know, it says, set him not by thee. See, least when he hath overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. Neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat. And thou at the last remember my words and be pricked therewith. See, the Spirit just had me say that. Who will pity a charmer that is bitten with a serpent, or any such as come nigh wild beasts? So one that goeth to a sinner and is defiled with him in his sins, who will pity? All right. It says, for a while he will abide with thee, but if thou begin to fall, he will not tarry. An enemy speaketh sweetly with his words, but in his heart he imagineth how to throw thee into a pit. Weren't we just speaking about that? He will weep with his eyes, but if he find an opportunity, he will not be satisfied with blood. And I was watching, you know, I was flipping through the channels, watching that bullshit CNN, you know, with that shooting at that in Pittsburgh at that synagogue, and they were interviewing these two so-called Jew hoes, and they were trying to look like they was all innocent and all sad. And I'm looking at these hoes, I'm like, look at this bullshit, man. I was getting mad. I said, you see this shit? And then the bitch that was interviewing them, I said, this is all a bunch of bullshit. You know, they're over there trying to look all sad because, you know, these devils, they have what's called the ADL. You know, I forget exactly what the ADL stands for. I haven't looked it up in a while. Something defense something. What it is with them is they have to, in order for them to get money, they have to report incidents of certain things, how they're suffering persecution, you know, so-called anti-Semitism, you know, so they have to create certain things to justify, you know, being persecuted so that they can keep getting money. That's their hustle. So this whole shit, that was just a way for them to do two things: keep getting that money. Right there, you go, Anti-Defamation League, the water brother. The water Gamal, brother Gamal down in Atlanta, the water brother, and shalom to the Akim on the comment boards, and any sister that may be watching. So pretty much it deals with two main points. The first one is for them to keep getting that money by reporting so-called anti-Semitism crap, and also the second part of that is they're trying to demonize us because they know that we speak against them so-called Jews as being false. So that's a way. I'm not sure what race the shooter was, but he kept saying he hates Jews and all that stuff like that, you know. And this is a way for them to use that even more to demonize us, because anybody that talks about the so-called Jews, they're just a mortal enemy, you know. And when these devils are not the people of the Lord, they're not the Israelites, you know. But that's all right. Yeah, like the brother holding firm put crisis actors, and that's exactly what them hoes were, crisis actors. Okay, Banaya lawyer said he was an Edomite, but the point is, they said he hates so-called Jews, you know. But this is all pushing. Everything is always geared to make to bring more and more sympathy for these gutter rats, you know. And this is why they do that. You know, yeah, Black Lives Matter, that shit was set up by them gutter rats. All that shit, the NAACP was set up by so-called Jews. They run everything behind the scenes, but they put Jake's face in the forefront, as they always do. You know, and I was going to go into this article, which I didn't get a chance to go into. Forced sterilization in Peru paid for by U.S. taxpayers, and it goes into how, you know, back in the 90s, they had over 200,000 women down in Peru sterilized against their will. And guess who the women were? They were indigenous women of those lands. You know, it wasn't they didn't do it to white women or Chinese or so-called, because you have so-called Jews that live in those areas. They did it to the indigenous population, which are Israelites. You know, and they and you know and they have that so-called Planned Parenthood, you know, down there and all that shit, you know, in so many words. But they see they have more flexibility down there to be able to force these people to do these things, which they wouldn't be able to do here in America. And they're using the American taxpayer to do this. You know, a thing called eugenics, which means good genes. You know, I was gonna go into a little bit of that, but the spirit, you know, didn't allow me to. But you know, at least I got a chance to mention it. You know, but you know, that's pretty much it. These devils are very deceptive, and this is what they're doing. Um, I'll just finish off here. It says, if adversity come upon thee, matter of fact, let me go back to 16. An enemy speaketh sweetly with his lips, but in his heart he imagineth how to throw thee into a pit. He will weep with his eyes, but if he find opportunity, he will not be satisfied with blood. If adversity come upon thee, thou shalt find him there first. And though he pretend to help thee, yet shall he undermine thee. Because they're not about helping us. You know, all that shit. Oh, I got good friends, white friends. Man, that's all bullshit. And if you do have a so-called white-looking person that's really good to you, then more than likely that might be an Israelite that just looks like a white person. He will shake his head and clap his hands and whisper much and change his countenance. You know, it's gonna go from that smiles, you know, that friendly smile to that sinister look that finally got you where I want you. You know, now he don't have to be phony no more. And that's how these devils are. They're phony because they're guilty and they don't want Jake to flip out. So they're constantly smiling and laughing. And when you're smiling and laughing and cooning with them, you know, then they feel safe. You know, but there's going to come a time when the Lord is going to raise up the true men of the Lord, you know, which he's doing right now. And all this bullshit is going to stop, man. You know, all this bullshit is going to stop. There's talks in the markets, you know, of something big happening, you know, with the stock market and the financial things, you know, the financial situation of the world is going to be something that's going to happen that's going to, you know, turn the tides, man, because it's time for this devil to go down. All right, so with that, you know, I pray, you know, your brothers and few sisters have been edified. Until the next time I say shalom.